I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed's Sunday feature interview. I'll be back again tomorrow with another weekday episode of Fear and Greed, the normal mix of business news and interviews that sets you up for a successful day. In the meantime, enjoy our Sunday feature interview. Few companies have performed better than Domino's Pizza during the COVID-19 pandemic period. Domino's in Australia has become the dominant pizza retailer in the country, and the group owns the master franchise in parts of Europe and Japan. That diversification has benefited the group during the past 12 months. Since the market's bottom in March, Domino's share price has more than doubled. This morning, I'm delighted to welcome to Fear and Greed Chief Executive Officer of Domino's, Don Meij. Good morning, Don.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Now, tell us about the history of Domino's in Australia. What's the Domino's story?
Yeah, so Domino's in its early years struggled internationally, very, very US-centric and like a lot of international businesses, which in fact we learned from when we finally went international, just didn't really understand the Australian consumer. And so it arrived here in the 80s and we acquired the business in 93. So we were a little Brisbane company called Silvio's Dollar Pizza. And the owners of Silvio's acquired Domino's out of its third liquidation in Australia in 93.
Wow.
And we built the business from there and now taken it globally, ironically, as an ASX-listed company with a US brand.
So over that 27 years, you acquired stores and then opened your own stores under the Domino's brand. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, so what happened is that 93, we still ran the two businesses separately for 2 years. I actually ran Domino's and the founders of Silvio's ran Silvio's. We couldn't run two separate brands. So finally in 95, we made the decision to go with what was actually the smallest business in Australia and had historically been the loser. But we converted our Australian business to Domino's because we really realized that there was a lot of global insights from Domino's and being part of the global family would take us to another level. Then with our own Australian insights of running a business in Australia, a lot of people don't realise, but Australia doesn't have a third workforce like most other countries around the world. We're a very socialised labour force, and therefore it's, we through training and so on, we get a whole different productivity model. Taste buds for Australians are very different to Americans, which may surprise us a little bit, but, because of our Asian-centric rather than Hispanic-centric. So there's all these sort of different insights with product, with running teams that, the Australian knowledge, US brand, and we took on Pizza Hut in those early days.
Sure did. And in the end, you've grown to be much larger than most of your competitors, in fact, all of your competitors in your market. Why do you think Domino's is so successful? Is there one thing you can put your finger on?
Yeah, we're obsessed with the value equation for customers, and it's all about the customer. So we're obsessed with listening to the customer, and the way we talk about value is that it's product, so the quality of the product, the service, and the image divided by the price. So the better the product versus the price or the service or the image, then the better the value, and that we work on that equation permanently. So we're always trying to think of how do we make our product better, our services better, which today often comes with technology. The image of the brand, so the image both with the way our team members engage or our stores or our websites, and all of that gets packaged up into the value equation, and it's all driven with an obsession around the customer.
Okay, now I've spoken to you before and you talk about the time to deliver a pizza. You need a great pizza, but also the importance of getting it to the customer quickly. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, so we use the phrase internally that time is the enemy of food. And that is that as soon as a product is freshly produced in any kitchen, it starts to deteriorate quite quickly, by the second. And so we're obsessed with getting it from out of the oven and into the customer's hands as quickly and as safely as possible. So we have a project called Project 310, which is the ultimate goal for all of our stores globally to deliver in under 10 minutes. We have a number of stores around the world who do that consistently now already. When we started this project, just to put into perspective, our average delivery times used to be 25 to 28 minutes around the world. We now have a store, the world record for our company is out of a store in Tokyo, Japan, with 2 minutes and 27 seconds for a whole week. Freshly made, and this is what really startles people, is that you can make 1.2 billion variations of a Domino's pizza. So it's got to be made fresh. There's nothing that's pre-made. It's fresh dough. It's freshly topped and freshly cooked. And we're doing this with a lot of what we call co-pilots and technologies, so that they're giving us, we've got faster bake ovens. We're getting smaller delivery areas. We have a thing called the future order screen, which when the customer's inside the app's already predicting their order. And it gets it to about a 98, 99% accuracy. And then we start making and baking before the customers even press enter. So we do we've got a lot of these sort of things that we're doing.
How does that work with the app? How do you get a pizza in under 3 minutes from order to delivery?
So if you imagine, so if you're in the app, it takes 2, 3, 5 minutes to, as you're playing around with your product and manufacturer, you're designing your own pizzas or your own order. Our algorithm's already predicting where you're going to get to, and with AI, and then we're actually already starting the process of making and baking your pizza.
Wow.
And it takes, freshly made pizza takes a couple of minutes. It cooks in about 3 minutes, and then the drive times today are about 3 minutes. So if we can get an advantage there, and then and there's so many other ones. Like we just launched in Australia a piece of technology called Call on Arrival. And what we learned when we're trying to, crush time is that in a manual process, if we called the customer and asked them to meet us at the door, then we would save 1 to 3 minutes because the customer would actually come out and meet us. Now, you would think SMS or push notification would do the same thing, but what we found is a push notification is only 40% accurate, a phone call is almost 100% accurate.
Wow.
So now we have a piece of AI that when we're 2 minutes from your home, that AI calls you and asks you to come and meet us out the front. Well, then once again, that saves us that 1 to 3 minutes. And our customers love it because, our NPS score goes up because they've got a hotter, fresher pizza in their hands.
And it's friendlier as well.
It is, and it is a friendly call,
Yeah. You said 3 minutes delivery time. So part of your strategy has been, and you've been criticised for this at times, opening new stores. But the idea behind that presumably is so that you can get that fresh product to the customer quicker?
That's right. It's contradictory in the age of the internet. A lot of the thought in the age of the internet has been, well, surely we're going to go to hub and spoke. Surely it's going to be that you close down the retail sites and you have just these warehouses or, in our industry, the dark kitchens. But actually, the biggest cost of anything for delivery is the actual labor cost of the human beings getting that product to the customer. That's the largest cost globally for us in our business. So by getting the kitchens actually closer to the customer, we reduce our biggest cost. And we also, obviously, customers love it, so our sales go up because we're delivering a hotter, fresher pizza. So long story short, with getting these kitchens within a 3-minute radius of every customer in each of our countries is our goal.
And the data, what does that show because the criticism has been around on the franchisee front that you're splitting areas, but what's the data show on that?
Yeah, so the reality is that we continually show that the original store recovers within an 18 months to 3-year window. And what we do for the franchisee is we give them royalty and advertising waivers to absolutely safety net that. So when we sit with a franchisee, number one, we can't make an area split. They own that territory for 10 years. And that's one of the other misunderstood things. So it's up to the franchisee. So we come and present them with the data and we say, look, there's a viable store. Your store will recover in 18 months to 3 years. What we'll do is we'll subsidize to make sure that that's safety netted. And then you end up with 2 stores. And in the end, the franchisee can either choose to do it. They could either sell the territory or choose not to do it.
Their choice. Something I find interesting with Domino's management, many of them have actually run pizza places themselves, actual stores.
That's right. I'm a 33-and-a-half-year veteran now, and I was a franchisee where I grew from 1 to 17 stores and used the equity of those stores to buy part of the company and become the CEO back in 2001 and 2002. And that's a very common story in that many of our CEOs and even other parts of our team are our best franchisees who we've recruited internally, and they may have rolled up the value in their business into equity, or they may have taken the money off the table. That's their choice. The benefit of that is number one is the empathy, because we're a franchise people-led business. And the empathy that a franchisee coming into our leadership team has is extraordinary. They've walked in the same shoes. But they're our best franchisees. So our best franchisees are proven people developers. They're great marketers. They understand finance and P&Ls and balance sheets. So they're more rounded and developed, even though they were small business owners. In fact, running a Domino's country is like running a Domino's franchise. And you just got to do it on a bigger scale. And obviously, you've got the public company side of it as well that they have to learn.
The last few years, you've really moved offshore into Europe and Japan. I suppose a couple of things there. Is the Australian market saturated yet? And then why did you go offshore?
It's so interesting. When we listed the business, we thought we would run out of feed in Australia well earlier, and we still haven't. The data still shows that there should be 1,200 stores between Australia and New Zealand over the next 5 years, and that still would make us materially smaller than McDonald's or KFC or Subway, believe it or not. So we'd still be only the 4th largest fast food company in Australia with 1,200 stores in Australia and New Zealand. But in the early days, we thought, will we be an Australian-only business with 5 or 6 brands, or should we go offshore? Are we really good at Domino's? And we originally went into Europe. We now have 5 countries in Europe. We're now in Japan. And the really interesting thing is, in my early days, I used to have 2 envies of the world for the rest of the Domino's businesses, is that, the population was small in Australia and New Zealand, and the Aussie dollar was all over the shop. Well, today we service 340 million people. That's more population than the US. And when you combine those 9 countries together, they have a GDP larger than China. So we have this incredible opportunity now in what are the unloved economies of the world. Most companies in the last 10 to 15 years have talked a lot about the BRIC nations, the very romantic emerging nations. Well, we've gone into some of the most business-friendly economies in the world, like Japan and Germany and France and the Netherlands and the Benelux. And they were the least attractive, but yet they're stable, strong economies, euro, yen. In Europe, very big pizza eating nations, not so much in Japan, but we're educating the Japanese to eat pizza. And the irony today, our 2 fastest growth businesses are Japan and Germany, which is 210 million people. And they are literally the fastest growing by far in our business.
Wow. So how are you doing that in Japan? Because I couldn't imagine that they certainly don't have a culture of eating pizza.
It's really interesting. We've become fashionable. It's really funny that most Australians would think of Domino's as a brand that's been around a while. But in Japan, we were in fact, on Sunday night, there was a 54-minute TV program all on just Domino's in Japan, how we're bringing authenticity externally, but embracing in a Japanese way. And so we've got this barbell strategy where on one end, it may surprise Australians that we sell pizzas for $50 or $60. And they're very premium product, quattro, 4 styles of pizza on one pizza, very premium. And on the other end, we've got more a value kind of product, which is the Japanese would consider quite American. So pepperoni, cheese pizzas and simple pizzas. And this barbell strategy means that we're servicing what we call meal as a task. So the growing single householders in Japan, unfortunately, Japan's had a shrinking population, an aging population. So we're doing quite well with single and dual householders. And on the other end, with the big premium products, we service special occasions and fashion. I mean, a really interesting one is we launched a 1 kilogram of cheese pizza.
That can't be healthy, Don.
Well, it's indulgent and it's been extraordinary. We moved the dairy market of Japan.
Wow.
With a 1 kilogram cheese pizza. And we've relaunched it in 3 different variants since, a 750 gram and a 500 gram different, but it's just so exotic and so different and fashionable. So long story short, we're on trend and,
That's great. That's where you want to be. So are Europe and Japan the geographies where you'll get most growth in coming years?
Yeah, so Australia and New Zealand, still a lot of growth, but outstripped now by just clearly population, size and scale of mainland Europe in our businesses there. In the near term, Japan is now, we have more stores in Japan than Australia. We just passed that in the last month and they're just shooting away now. So in the next decade, Japan will probably become our biggest business, then to be eclipsed by Germany in the longer run. And only because the Germans eat a lot more pizza.
Right.
So, coming from further behind, we only have 335 stores in Germany right now versus our 710 in Japan. But yeah, and then of course you've got France and the Benelux, which is about the same size as Australia and New Zealand population-wise, is still got a lot of growth.
So Benelux being Belgium and Luxembourg, is that right?
Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, yeah.
Right, yep.
Originally, most of our profit has actually been made by Australia, New Zealand, and the Benelux, which is about 60 million population. But now the other 280 million, which is the bigger business, is now the real surging business, which is largely Japan, Germany, and France.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned in the introduction just how well your share price has gone in recent months during the pandemic. How have you handled, and your staff and your teams handled the pandemic?
Yeah, look, I'm really proud, Sean, of just how well they've done. In that March period, we were all deer in the headlights. At one point, we had the whole of France and the whole of New Zealand closed. So, 550 stores was our 2,700 store system going to close. How were we going to manage that? And so we literally threw out the budget. We threw out all of our TV commercials at the time, and we just put people first. We realized that it was a privilege to be able to trade. It's not a right, which was a learning for us. And because we're privileged enough to trade, that turned us into a mission mentality of our safety for our team members, safety for our customers, And then also the generosity that if we were privileged enough to be open, then number one, let's be generous. So let's continue to give. There were a lot of people on the front line. We've donated hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pizzas now, and we continue to do that. Raise money where those that need raising, because we're trading and so many other people aren't or under trading or out of jobs. We've hired a lot of people. We hired 13,000 additional team members in the first 4 or 5 months. We'll probably hire somewhere between 10 to 15,000 between now and Christmas. So material, we're adding jobs where possible. Don't take government support if we're privileged enough to trade. So as a company, we didn't pay bonuses if there was any JobKeeper or any government money paid. And we're not taking on in Australia with our company stores. We can't talk about franchisees because they have to make their own decisions. But in our company, we're not taking on, the rebates for training and development of people. We're saying, look, we're doing well. We're privileged to do well. So we should be very generous and, not lean on the government purse wherever possible.
Is Domino's a pizza retailer? Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really unfortunate thing that because we've embraced technology so well, that along the way there's been a myth that we've said that we're a technology business, and we're not. We're a pizza retailer. That's what we proudly are. Now we've embraced technology because that's what every retailer should be doing. So we've done a good job at that. But then any good retailer who's done well in the last decade has embraced technology. Yeah, we're obsessed about pizza.
Okay, will drones ever deliver pizza?
Yeah, I do believe that automated delivery in all its forms will happen. We still have projects going on. We're about to start another project in Canberra with a company called KiwiBot, which are out of California, and that's ground-based robots. We have a partnership with a company called Flirty out of Reno, founded by an Australian, but he moved his business to Nevada. He's doing a lot of work in the US at the moment, not so much in Australia and New Zealand, but we did a lot of work initially in New Zealand. I do think it's coming. It won't be one size fits all. And the motivation behind that is that there's not enough human beings on the planet to deliver the number of packages that the internet of retail require. And before COVID, we were already struggling in Europe and Japan. We didn't have enough team members to deliver already. And so automated delivery, because the cost of delivery is going to rise so quickly, wages the year before in Japan went up 43% as a market rate, not the government rate, with just the scarcity of labor. And so the real cost of delivery is so high, you see all these aggregators around the world losing a ton of money because even though they're expensive, they're inefficient to the real cost of delivery. So automated delivery is definitely coming. It's just time and money and obviously safety.
So where will Domino's be in 5 years' time?
Well, we're going to be a lot bigger, that's for sure. We tell our shareholders that we'll on average grow at 7 to 9% our store count compounding. Our same-store sales should grow 3 to 6 compounding. Now, both those numbers potentially could be larger this year, as we showed in the first part of our reporting period, because we didn't open as many stores in the last quarter because of the pandemic for the last financial year, so that's spilled over into this year. But there's a lot of things unfortunately, and I say this unfortunately, that all of us wish this pandemic would go away as quick as possible. But there is a lot of distressed retail sites. So we've got access to sites. We've got a larger access to people right now, both from a team member point of view, but also professional executives. We're getting a high talent that people we couldn't recruit the last 2 years because of shortage in technology, strategy insights, data scientists. We're now getting access, which is for unfortunate reasons, but hey, as a business, we have an obligation to maximize these opportunities as well. And interest rates are low, soft commodities are reasonable. So everything is in our favor. So, yeah, we're trying to grow as hard and as fast as we can.
Now, just before I let you go, you're an executive of a global business now, and I appreciate right now you're in quarantine because you've come back into Australia recently. How do you spend your time, though, normally? Do you end up spending a lot of time on planes? How does it work? How do you run such a big business?
Yeah, before the pandemic, I would spend 8 months of the year approximately outside Australia, and that was mostly spent in Europe and Japan. But we also, part of my role is also discovery. So whether it be other future countries or going on technology and product tours, to make sure we're at the front of where is the best retail technology. And so between our own business and trying to stay on the forefront, it kept me out of Australia about 8 months of the year. So, but I loved it. Don't get me wrong. It's not for any. I love our business. It's interconnected with my life. So it's hard for me sometimes to define: is this work or is this the passion of my life?
No plans to give up soon, then, Don?
No, I'm going to be here as long as shareholders want me to be here and as long as my health keeps me here. So, I'd love to be able to celebrate a 50th anniversary one day at Domino's, but we're a public company, so you can't be a passenger, right? You're only as good as your last result, and you've got to stay on. You've got to keep reinventing yourself as well as an individual.
Well, after a couple of years where it's not quite clear what investors thought, certainly more recent times, they're big fans of you, Don. Thank you very much for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you, Sean. It's my pleasure.
That was Chief Executive Officer of Domino's, Don Meij.